Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy. And this week, and every week, I feel like the guests that I'm having on are getting better and better and better. This week specifically is a week to listen to if you're a female entrepreneur. If you're in a business, you're striving to build something, you want to be successful and show your worth and show other people and yourself that you can be successful in whatever you put your mind to, then this is the episode for you. So I'm excited to bring to you Jemimah Ashleigh. She's from Australia, and she is on a mission, a crusade. She needs more help, right? But part of her crusade is to help female-led businesses. According to her, she says 97% of female-led businesses are failing, and her goal is to minimize that, if not eliminate it, which I love that, trying to create these massive impacts in people. Jemimah herself has built 3 successful businesses and is just a really highly sought after business consultant, and has the number 2, if I'm reading this correctly, number 2 hosted Australian business podcast. So she's no small fish, guys. She's no small fish from the land down under. So super excited. I'm excited to learn because my primary clientele, if you've listened to this podcast, you know my primary clientele is females as well, maybe from a different place, but I want to help them become successful and help them gain the financial confidence to really build and create a meaningful legacy to them. And so with that, go ahead, Jemimah, and let us know like where you came from, how you got into this passion project of helping female entrepreneurs, and where's that headed? What are you building?
Yeah, thank you. I love that intro. Thank you so much. That was a great intro. So all of that stuff that you just said is accurate. So the United Nations released the horrifying statistic that 97% of female-led startups will fail in the first 5 years. This is, I don't know about you, but for me, this was pretty much an unacceptable number. And it gets worse when I tell you that female-led startups are failing at twice the rate of our male counterparts. So this is such a absolute passion project for me, and such a thing that I just find really unacceptable for so many different reasons. But I'll just take you back a little bit first. So I've always worked in male-dominated areas. I started my career really not in business at all. I used to work in law enforcement, and for 10 years I worked for a company or an agency called the Australian Federal Police in Australia. And while I love my job, after 10 years of being in law enforcement, I was exceptionally burnt out. No one was ever having a good day in law enforcement, right? You've either got victims, you've got offenders, and you've got community impact. And I was working in sort of people smuggling, human trafficking, major drug offenses. Like, these are not little impact things for the community. These are significant challenges. So I was also only about 8% of females were kind of doing, 8% of the population were female. So I certainly always have kind of been in male-dominated areas. In 2015, I had a bit of an experience that kind of changed everything for me, where I found myself really, really stressed and really, really suffering for the first time ever, sort of having anxiety attacks, and realized that I was so stressed out and needed to kind of get some work-life balance. And with that, I started my first business and wanted a little bit of a side hustle of a creative release. And I started making jewelry, of all things. And the more that I learned about sort of making jewelry, and the more that people then asked me to buy pieces, and I was so incredibly grateful for that. And I wanted to learn more and more about business, which is where the podcast comes in. So I start learning as much as I can about business so rapidly, and then start the podcast. And so it was, named one of the top 2 business podcasts to be listening to, which is pretty amazing. It was called The Business Experiment, and we wrapped that up in end of 2017. So 18-month kind of beautiful podcast there, and sort of again tech and being as male dominated as well. where I started to sort of see the sort of thing about women for me really started presenting itself was the more networking events I was doing, and when my profile grew, I was talking to more and more women, and they were just like, I just don't have time. I'm struggling to get on top of what I needed to get done. And the real reason that and when I started really digging into these statistics for women and why we're failing at twice the rate, there was very much I identified very quickly that we have something called invisible tasking. This is the intangible stuff that we have to do. For example, we need milk today, or no one's having a coffee. We need to take the dog to the vet. We need to take the kids to school. We are going to vacuum the floor. This invisible tasking is really giving, and these invisible jobs are like 4 hours a day for women. Women are doing 85% on average, and I know there are a few people out there who will say my husband and I have a split, or I certainly do, my wife, I do the lion's share of that. That's great. But statistically, women are doing 85% of all household tasks. So this stuff adds up. And if you are doing 4 hours extra a day and 85% of all the other stuff, and you're trying to start a business, and we're looking at that business taking at least 2 years to start to make a profit, if not even getting any revenue in the door, something has to give. Your kids, your family, and your house are always going to come first. This is why women are opting out, because we're just like, we just physically, mentally, and emotionally can't support doing all the things that we have to do. So being around now intelligent women and figuring out what the other thing women are doing is, we don't start at the beginning. We tend to go, I think I understand the goals and the values. I think I understand what I need to do next. And they try to skip steps because they just don't have as much time. So we came up with this wild idea about, what if we gave women the right tools at the right time in the right order? And that's where this whole thing came from, about giving women the right support at the right time.
That's awesome. And
it's a lot of information I just threw at you.
No, it's interesting. So what made you want to go into law enforcement in the beginning? Like, what was the dream or vision? What were you fulfilling by being in law enforcement?
Yeah, I grew up in a very rural community. I can shear a sheep. I had to catch a bus for an hour to go to school every day. We had a farm. I can drive a tractor, very rural community. And for a lot of it, everyone sort of assumed that I would stay local and that I would do what 95% of people did, become a teacher or a nurse or a mum and married at 20. That was never really inherently in me. I did things at school like languages like Indonesian and French and Russian history. And so all through kind of my high school years, but I fell in love with legal studies and I started doing legal studies. And what ended up coming out of that was, a very smart teacher said to me, don't pick the end job that you want. Pick something a field that you're interested in. When I was looking at going to university and college in 2003, and I went, okay. And I really got quite interested in legal studies and the process. And the Twin Towers had fallen 2 years earlier. The war on terror was certainly well underway, and I realized that I really liked this kind of area of psychology meets law enforcement. And my dad had been a local police officer for many years, so I understood the legal stuff and I really was interested in it. And that's where I decided I wanted to join the Australian Federal Police. And so I worked through my way through the courts, getting some experience, then worked over in prisons for a little while, and then over to Victoria Police before ultimately being recruited by the Australian. And yeah, an amazing job.
That's awesome. And was at any point in time, did you have people who were thinking, why are you going into that field? Like, were there naysayers who were trying to distract you from following that as your passion at that point in time? Or was it like people supported you? How did that go?
Two things can be true. Both those happened. So I remember at the end of in Australian schooling system, we have sort of a year 12 exam period where the entirety of the state are ranked against each other, and you are given a number for where you sat percentage wise. And so, everyone's hoping to get 80s and 90s because that opens up every door. I sat sort of in the low 80s, and I was offered 2 different degrees that I had asked to do. One was education and schooling. I looked at doing secondary teaching for a little while. The other degree that I looked at was doing national security. Again, following this idea of something I was interested in doing. And one of my teachers, who I know meant well, but missed the mark a little bit, he said to me, if you end up doing national security, you were going to end up working nights doing security at bars. Don't do that. And I thought, that's very narrow-sighted, firstly. I was like, that's a little
possible outcome.
yeah, the only time I'm going to do is like, and he named the bar that was nearby, and he's like, you're going to end up with. And I remember thinking, that was the first time I recognized that some people were never going to leave the hometown. And I went, that's not going to be me. In no way, shape, or form is that going to be me. So then other people were super supportive when I joined. Like, my dad was a police officer. He was super supportive of me doing that. But again, I was very young. I was only 22 when I sort of joined law enforcement. So very young female, but it was a good career move.
That's so interesting. I love that realization. I think more people need to have that in all areas of their life, not just a physical location geographically. Like, man, some people are never going to leave, and it's okay that you leave them. That could be friendships, that could be family, that could be employment, that could be children. I mean, that could be so many business partners, whatever. Some people, they're just flat unwilling to grow and to develop themselves. And I'm not advocating for splitting up families, I'm not advocating for that at all. There is, however, a reality that we need to be conscious of, that we owe allegiance to ourselves as individuals first. And if we choose to stay back, then we aren't actually able to help the people that we love most. If we're willing to venture out and leave for a time, there's going to be a time when we become successful, and all those people that we left, that we abandoned, right, or that they thought we abandoned them, that we're actually able to help them like nobody else could have helped them. I think
absolutely nailed it. 100% agree with you. I think what you have to recognize is that people, I think most people are not trying to dissuade you from your dreams because they don't believe you can do it. They try to dissuade you because they're scared for you. And there's a big difference. So it's because they don't have the ability to do it. It's not that they don't want you to succeed. I think most people in everyone's life, and like, if someone blatantly doesn't want you to succeed, you need to really evaluate who you're spending time with. Because, I mean, Jim Rohn famously quoted, "You are the sum of the five people." Do not underestimate that. The people that you're around make you grow, inspire you, push you, make you a better person. You need to be very acutely aware of where you're spending your time and what, who is influencing your circle. But I think for the most part, people are just scared for you. And because they've never had the ability, they don't know if you can do that. And people don't want to see you fail. I think that's really if we're people that care about you. And then there are other people who have more malicious kind of activity of like, well, I never got to succeed, so you can't either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a healthy dose of both, I think, in most people's lives. But the same realization, I think, needs to come like, okay, you're not going to change.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have to be my future. And so I love that example. So you were there, finally got some anxiety. Sounds like you just burnt out in your profession.
Yeah.
10 years. I mean, 10 years is a long time. It's way past the average of somebody staying in any one career field.
Especially millennial, let's be honest.
Yeah. In our lifespan and what we're looking at, 5 to 7 years is like the max for most.
Yeah.
Like that's really where the average is at, the high end of the average, to remain in an industry. Just because of shifting world tide. I mean, there's so many things that could implement that. And I love that you went from, I mean, you have 3 very, very different industries, it sounds like, law enforcement to jewelry making, building a business in jewelry, podcasting, and now business coaching. I mean, there are 3 such different areas of working, or 4 different areas of working. What was that transition like? And do you feel like it was a more natural transition, or was it a big delineation between each transition?
It was a very natural transition. I think the jewelry comes about. I'm in New York City, and I had a bit of a chance encounter where I was staying, and I met a silversmith who was making jewelry. And I had done woodwork and metalwork at school, but I'm a little older, maybe I care to admit to, but I was told when I wanted to do that in sort of the year 11, year 12 area that I would be the only girl. I certainly wasn't declined from doing it because I was female, but I was told with no uncertain terms, you will be the only girl in this class. So maybe you don't want to do that. Okay. So I opted not to do those things. So I basically refound something that I was very interested in. I liked working with metal and I liked working with wood. And I grew up on a farm, so I was okay getting my hands dirty, and law enforcement isn't exactly keeping your hands clean a lot of the time. So I ended up sitting with a gentleman for a couple of hours who was a silversmith and making jewelry pieces, which was incredible. It was an absolutely incredible afternoon. And I thought, I'm really interested in this because I like that you started with nothing and ended up with something. And that was the first time I really, sorry, I was having some thunder and lightning happening over top. And this never happens in LA ever, by the way. It never rains and there's never storms. And like all night it's been thunder and lightning all night. It's been amazing. So it was very, very natural for that. And then I wanted to learn more about business. I was starting a business. I grew my business very quickly, and I very much had an inherent understanding of what I needed to do. But with the business as it grew, I needed to get more education. So I was consuming podcasts, a lot of podcasts. I was consuming a lot of articles. I found Gary Vaynerchuk. I was watching his videos and content every day. And it was incredible. And then I thought, well, if I'm learning this stuff, I want to be able to teach other people. And within 3 to 4 months of really throwing myself into the deep end of learning whatever I could, I realized very quickly that I could delineate between really good advice and really terrible advice. And I could really identify who was selling the snake oil and who actually knew what they were doing. And so I wanted to give that to other people coming up.
Sure.
And that's where the podcast started.
There's 2 things that I want to highlight in that area of the story. One is that so often in life, the things that actually give us joy are refound something from our childhood or our younger years that we think was no longer an option. Because we got married and had kids, we no longer can be a pro golfer. We no longer can go and have these incredible dreams. And that's just flat not true. Guys have the same problem, right? I meet with people all the time, men who they're working a 9-to-5 job that they hate, whatever, but because they fathered a child or they got married, then they feel like it's their duty and their responsibility to provide for their family in a safe, secure environment. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a male-female problem. Like, it's not either one gender. There's equally just as many men who hate their life as women, in my opinion, and that's maybe a man's perspective, right? But there's the second part of that is this interesting thing that I think more people need to be aware of. What are your unique experiences? She had a unique experience, and maybe unique from a perspective of it probably happens to a lot of women. It's not unique in that area, but it's unique that it's part of her story and it's what's serving her, that she wanted to follow her passion and she was dissuaded from following her passion due to basically on the basis of sex or gender, saying, hey, well, you're going to be the only one in this industry, so maybe you don't want to do that. And now what is she passionate about? She's passionate about helping women, and she's quoting statistics and the language that she's using. And I'm not slamming this, okay? So don't take this as like, I'm trying to call attention to it so people can see it in their own life. But the language pattern that she uses so naturally is a conversation of males in an industry versus females in an industry. She's drawing that contrast specifically so she can help the people that she needs to help. And you as an individual, you may have unique experiences in any area of your life. Maybe your division that you need to call attention to isn't between genders or sex. Maybe it's between one type of product or another type of product. But for me, it's between one type of financial advice or another type of financial advice. Like, you have to create that separation so there's clarity in who you're trying to help and why you're trying to help them. It's a very important thing when you're building a brand or building a business, that you're focused on creating that delineation of who you're there to help and why you're there to help them. So what are your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
I definitely agree. Language is very important. I think one of the things I really want to highlight here is that what you have to remember in everything that you do is that there is polarity in everything that we do. So for every negative, there's a positive. For every positive, there is a negative. What you have to be careful of, and this is, I think, when you're talking about between this advice and this advice, is that if you're in this kind of area, you have to be very careful that there isn't a judgment call, and there isn't like, this is negative, this is bad, this is good, this is, and I'm not trying to draw that women need more help than men. I've certainly worked with a lot of male clients. I've certainly worked with a lot of female clients. It is around, for me, it's about equality, and it's about giving people the opportunity, regardless of gender, the right opportunity at the right time to get their business underway. What we've just identified is where there is a huge gap for women. This isn't to say women should be given jobs that they're not qualified for. It's certainly not what I'm saying. I'm for equality across the board. I think the really big thing that we have to be careful of when we have that language is that it's not, nothing is good or bad. It's just like, this is why we're doing the thing we're doing. So like, just really when you're making that big statement for you, it's around making sure there's no judgment behind it. So it's just, this is what I think. Yeah.
So I agree. I'm gonna share how I would have that conversation and why, right? And not necessarily the conversation, but the language, right? Because we use judgment in so many different ways. It's almost like the English word for love. We only have really one word for love, and we use I love this phone, I love my wife, I love my kids, I love my family. And it's like, well, what type of love are you talking about? Because there clearly is there's a different type of love with your sexual partner than there is with your child. Hopefully,
of course,
they're not the same, right? So, so judgment is one of those words that's used, I think, overused, and then because it's overused, it's taken out of context. So I have to make a judgment call by the 5 people I hang around with. It's not good or bad, but it's a judgment call. I'm judging a situation and determining how I want to proceed in that situation, and that is a judgment call. If I'm driving down the street and there's a red light versus a green light, now I know the laws. I know that it's illegal to drive through a red light, but if there's nobody on the road, right, then I have to make a judgment call. Am I really going to stop fully for this red light, or am I going to go through it? And most people, they're going to stop, and that's a judgment call they make. Now, are they allowed to go through it? Sure, if they want to. Then there's potential danger. I think where the emotion, so to take whether it's good or bad, the emotion comes in when we start condemning one choice, when we start labeling it, and that's when the emotion of the judgment call steps in, and that's where I would separate. You do be making judgment calls. You have to be making judgment calls. If you refuse to make judgment calls in your life, you're going to be living an aimless life with like a ship without a rudder, right? You need to be making judgment calls throughout your life. You need to not be, in my opinion, making condemnation calls or condemning something as good or bad doesn't serve you in the long run. But judgment calls, I think that you should make judgment calls all the time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just, again, it's just that it's like everything is negative, everything is polarity. Right. It is that just understanding that you're not reframing something as completely negative or completely positive, because two things are always true.
Yeah. So anyways, that's how I...
Great point. Absolutely. 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I've just found that some people, they use judgment too often. I'm just like, okay, but let me rephrase it.
Well, it's a big thing, because if you can reframe that, you're absolutely correct when you say that if you never judge anything, you're never going to... It's true. Like, if you have to decide, there is decisions that need to be made with this. So, but yeah, I think just condemning is probably definitely the word.
Cool. Now, so I want to go into this invisible tasking thing.
Sure.
Because it's the first time I've ever heard it called that. I love the term. I wonder how, because I went through this experience with my wife where she's feeling overwhelmed with all this invisible tasking. And she sees me because I don't bring my work home with me, and I don't I don't vocalize all of my invisible tasking at work. Then it appears like there's an inequality. And I believe that there probably is in the area of home tasks, like things that just need to be done to keep a home running. And again, this is just to draw contrast. I totally, just so everybody's aware, I completely agree with Jemimah. I said it wrong again.
Jemimah. Yeah.
Jemimah. Okay. Sorry, I've been saying that wrong too long. So Jemimah, that it's something that needs to be aware of, and I would say written down and some clarity and some decisions made on who's going to worry about certain things in the household. I 100% agree with that. The thing that often gets overlooked, just from a man's perspective, and I'm sure that you would agree with this, is when you are running a business, there's just as many invisible tasking things going on the weight of the person who's the main breadwinner of a household, and all of the things that they're thinking about, all of the things that they have to get done, all of the things that they have to do to maintain the income to support all the household tasking that's happening. And so be aware that it's not just like, oh, I have all this invisible tasking and it's wrong that I have it, and my partner should be doing more of the load. Your partner probably feels the same way from an income perspective, depending on, it always depends on your dynamics of your household, but I definitely
I say where this, I agree with you. I think the person who is going, like, generally you will find, particularly in the startup realm, you will find that one person generally has a stable job, and then you have sort of let's call them the main breadwinner in this situation. Then if you have a female who is running a house and also doing a business, you've then double the load of the invisible tasking, which is where really I kind of come in and go, all right, how do we shorten this period of time? Mm-hmm. So I've found that, in the thousands of hours that I have gone and spoken to so many people about this, and the invisible tasking is predominantly found where you don't think it's going to be found, and it is not in 4 or 5 hour jobs. I am talking that 10 or 15 minutes per hour that you are doing stacks up very quickly. I'm talking about the fact that Christmas is just around the corner, and that we have Christmas presents to buy, Christmas presents to wrap, Christmas tree to go up. These things on average take about 10 hours to sort of get every Christmas present under the tree. This is time that's being cut out. And if this is, it's a division of tasks, but at the end of the day, it is also just a societal issue. It's not just, it's something that women have been taught that we cook the meals, we clean the house, we do the thing. And a lot of the time we don't even really sort of realize we're doing it because we're mimicking the things that we've seen our families do and our parents do. And there are very simple solutions to these. This is not like you have to go home and ruin your marriage and start screaming at each other about who's doing what. This is actually for $100 or $80 and in $50 in some situations. How much money is it going to cost us to get someone to come in and clean our house every 2 weeks? That single-handedly changed my relationships. Just by going, I don't have to worry about who's cleaning the bathroom and have those conversations anymore because someone's going to come in once a week and do it. And do you know how much time I get freed up? It's about those little hacks. They're very small ones. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's like, well, how do we make this more equal, but also how do we take it off everyone's plate so we don't have to worry about it? This is why we have virtual assistants. This is why we have, what else can you outsource? I've gotten one client who's a male. He lives in Austin, Texas, and he loved this idea of these tiny little hacks so much. He had me go through his entire day, like, what else could we little hack around? To the point now he gets all of his meals delivered, pre-cooked, pre-packaged, all of that, so he can focus on what needs to be done. Yeah. His house gets cleaned every 2 weeks. He does all of his laundry, but it's an allocated day and an allocated time that he does that. So it's not bleeding into other times. It's not around, how dare you, I told you to, like, let's not fight about who's spending 5 minutes taking the laundry. Like, the garbage has to go out, guys. This has to happen. How can we make it that it's going to have the least amount of impact in the day-to-day stuff? We still need milk. The dog still needs to go to the vet. The kids have to go to school. This is how this one goes. How can we make it easier? And we're effectively figuring out how to barter for time.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I completely agree. It's one of the reasons that my wife and I hired a nanny, and it's been awesome.
Best thing that you could do.
So I completely agree, and I think that I just want to create a good discussion for people to kind of come on and see both sides of these things. Now this again, all this stuff that we've been talking about, really good. I think that this last thing that I want to highlight of your story or what you're doing now is probably the biggest thing, in my opinion, of so far that we've talked and what I've read about you. This is the biggest thing. Giving people what they need when they need it and not allowing them to skip steps.
Yeah.
This is, I sincerely believe this is the one thing that it's held me back in the past. It's held so many people back in the past. because
Me
they
too.
aren't building from the right foundation. When I sit down and talk to somebody about their finances, they're like, oh, I've got money here, I've got money here, I've got money here. I'm like, okay, does that serve you? Is it helping you build the legacy that you want? Is it even remotely aligned with your core values? And does it bring you fulfillment? Right? And people are like, well, why do I need to talk about that? Just here's my money and go manage. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. I don't want to manage your money unless I know I'm doing these things for you. And it's turning the whole conversation on its head, really, and seeking for that fulfillment, seeking for what the meaning in what you're doing first. And then everything else becomes so much easier. Decisions become easier. Clarity of what do we need to outsource? What do we not need to outsource, right? You could, if you're somebody, I have a guy in my neighborhood. He's wealthy enough, he could outsource taking care of his landscaping and cutting his grass. However, that is like the most relaxing thing for him to do. He cares for it literally like a golf course. He has a golf course lawnmower. It's perfectly flat. If they had to, a few years ago, he had to change like, I don't know, 100 square feet of grass. He wanted to sod over some planter beds. Yeah. Instead of just like putting sod over those planter beds, he tore up his entire yard, relayed a sprinkler system, and redid everything just to make sure that a few feet of grass blended in with each other. Like, he loves it. Could he outsource it? He absolutely could. But it wouldn't give him the fulfillment.
Would I outsource it? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, me too, right?
I'm out.
But that's the thing. Like, understanding, again, it's not good or bad, but understanding what fulfills you that has to be the foundation. So speak to that as far as like how you make sure that people are getting just the right steps in the right order at the right time.
So you nailed it earlier when you spoke about the foundational stuff. I have so many people that come to me and go, I just want to write my book. I just want my book to be number one. And when that happens, it's going to change the game and I'm going to get paid like 5 figures to speak from stage. And then I can turn it into a 6-figure coaching program. And I'm like, why? Let's come back. Why? Why do you want that? What's the outcome here? Because if the outcome is, and I know that you can definitely attest to this, if you don't know why you're doing something, there is largely maybe not a point to be doing it at all. Stay with me. If you say to me, we sit down and we have this conversation, I say to you, so tell me, why do you want to be in business? And you say, because I want to take my kids to Disneyland. I want to take them to Disneyland every year. Okay. And you want to stay at the hotel. I'm like, how long do you want to stay there for? 2 weeks. Okay, great. And we do the math of that. And let's say that's going to cost $20,000. That does not answer why you want to do this job. If you tell me that you want to make 6 figures and you think this is the easiest way to do it, you've got to be kidding me. This is by far the hardest thing you are ever going to do for no reason. Like, if you just want 6 figures, go get a job. Like, I can name 100 careers right now that you can go and make 6 figures today in. This has to be bigger than you for 2 reasons. One, this is a commitment. This is a lifestyle choice. This is not a career. This is a lifestyle choice. It is not a clock on, clock off when we say we work 18-hour days. We don't work 18-hour days. It's not like I lay down on the couch and have a 15-minute nap. I take 15 minutes out of that. That's not how this goes. It's a lifestyle choice. We live, breathe, eat it. It is 12:40 here. I'm in Los Angeles. I have client calls all day. I love my job. I love it. Like, I live, breathe my job. I'm still going to go out and do LA stuff. I'm still probably going to have to take client calls. This is what our lives look like. It is just enmeshed with each other. The other thing that I would definitely say is that when we start from like, why are we doing what we're doing, we have to go back to the foundations. And I've always explained it like building a house. Most people get to their block of land and start to throw up a structure without having any idea what their foundation is. When we're in entrepreneurship, you have to build that so strongly so it is never going to fall down. Your concrete has to be set. It has to be ready to go. I have businesses that will turn up to me who are doing close to 6-7 figures, who are trying to hit that barrier, right? And trying to go to the 7 mark. And the amount that can't tell me why they're doing what they're doing is astounding. The problem is and they're burnt out and they're tired and they're getting over it, and like this has been hard, and maybe they're just sort of hitting medium, low, let's say low, like high fives, low sixes, and they sort of just say, look, I just don't know why I'm doing this anymore. I can't think of a reason. Your why has to be bigger than you for those days. When you're exhausted and you are done and you want to tap out and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, I have to be able to look at my pile of work and feel tired and go, well, 97% of small business female-led startups are going to fail in the next 5 years. If I don't keep doing this, what's going to change? If your why is I need to earn 6 figures or earn $100,000, it's not big enough of a why to make you get out of bed. That's not enough for there to be a pain point. And, we've never, ever changed anything when we haven't gotten tired of our own stuff. So it's a big thing to make sure that you have your foundations really down on your why that you're doing something. And I spend a lot of time with clients going, why are we doing this? And more specifically, where do you want to end up? Because these are the easy steps to skip. They are, absolutely. Putting a Facebook page up, super easy. Starting to get some followers on Instagram, not difficult. Start to like maybe sell 1 or 2 products, absolutely. But if your foundations aren't set, you are going to have to tap out. You are going to have to go, I can't go up anymore. You have no drive, you have no direction, you have no anything. You're just going to sort of flail around. This is where we get into trouble as small business owners. We don't have A to B, and don't get me wrong, the absolute journey of entrepreneurship is not a straight line between A to B. This is, you are going to go on a bush walk, you are definitely going to fall asleep, you're probably going to get hit by a train, you're going to get sick, you're going to have things go wrong, you're going to get lost, and then you're going to finally end up at B and be like, now what do I do? That hardest 2 years, that first 2 years is that danger area, because we can get just enough done that we're feeling productive. We can start to see just enough return that it's worth it. But if we don't have those whys and the foundations in place, we're not going any further than that kind of staying in that bushwalk for the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. So that's exactly where I've talked to a lot of business coaches, and anybody who's planning on starting you out anywhere other than what she just described, I would run from. And that's just the complete honest truth. They have a lot of good tactics that are effective for the right person who's already gone through this. But if you're somebody walking in thinking Facebook marketing is going to blow up your business, but you don't know why, you will waste money. Google AdWords, SEO, it doesn't matter. Like if you are going in without understanding what's happening, nothing is going to help you. And I just can't express that enough, because it's in every area of your life. If you don't know why you're getting into a relationship with a man or a woman, why you're starting a family, I mean, it goes every area of your life. If you don't have a good why, I promise you, life is hard, and it's harder than just cause, right? So if that's your reason for doing something is just cause, it's very unlikely you'll succeed in the long run.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not, like, let me be very clear here. Success is not accident. There is no one that won an Academy Award and is like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. This was fully intentional. When you get the #1 business podcast in Australia, you go, this was intentional. When you get an Amazon best-selling book, it is intentional. Mm-hmm. Success, it may look like we're like, oh, look at this amazing thing that happened. No, I worked my butt off for all of that stuff to happen. Everyone did. Do not think that I'm just going to figure it out as I go along. I have never met a business coach or someone that has been successful that does not have another business coach behind them.
Yep.
Doesn't have people guiding them. This is like, and this is the interesting thing about business coaching, is that people, it's a huge investment to make. I was like, it's the only investment.
I agree. And it's really not that big. Like, even no matter what, I don't know, every time I've paid a business coach, I've always made my money back way more than I ever paid.
Absolutely.
Right.
And if you're not, I would be, and this is where people say like, oh, I just need like $150 per person. And I get this. And I was like, again, and also like the smaller investment. And the first thing you should be asking is like, if you are going to engage with a business coach, the first thing you need to ask them is, you need to ask yourself is, have they done what you want to do?
Yep.
If someone walked to me and said, I want to make $1 million today, I was like, I've never done that, but I can certainly refer you to other people who can. I'm not the coach for you. If someone says to me, I want to write a best-selling book, I want to be a speaker, I want to travel the world, I want to have clients so I can live out of a suitcase, I've done that for 6 months. I've got you. Mm-hmm. That is very easy to do. If you, obviously being a financial guy is if people say, I want to have $100,000 in savings, if you've done it, absolutely. If you haven't done it, don't take that on.
Yep.
Like,
Exactly.
you have to be very, very mindful of that, because that's where I think a lot of people get into trouble. Also, there's also no, worldwide, there is no like qualification to be a coach. So effectively, you need to ask people, what businesses are you in? And also the other question is, what businesses have you owned, but what training do you have, and what other clients have you had? Because the amount of people that I've met that like, I'm a health coach, and they've done like a 6-hour course online, or the person who's a life coach because they read a Tony Robbins book. You think I'm kidding about this stuff? It is painfully accurate when you start to really ask questions. Ask good questions is the other thing.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it just is what it is, though. It's rampant in the world, and it's important to know how to vet. And it's worth paying somebody sometimes just to vet the coaching, right?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
good coaching or it's not a good coaching. So,
and speak to coaches and say, who would you recommend if I wanted to do this thing? Because good coaches will not be like, I'll help you. They'll be like, it's not my wheelhouse, but other people do it.
oh yeah,
Let me refer you on. Get referrals from people that you know, like, and trust.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm curious, like, what was the ultimate, if you were to say this helped me the most overcome my naysayers in life, how did you like really silence the biggest naysayers in your life?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there probably wasn't one moment where I felt like I stopped all the naysayers. But I do remember the moment that I stopped explaining myself to other people, which I think was the moment that I stopped caring if there were naysayers. I had a very stable government job. All my friends knew that I was in government. I traveled extensively around the world for my job. And I'd started a jewelry business, and the podcast was blowing up. Like, we were on Qantas. We were in Marie Claire. And this was not, I've never paid a cent for publicity ever, and I will never. Wouldn't pay to be in magazines and all this sort of stuff. And I had my beautiful friend Andrew, and I have apologized to him so many times for this, because so many people are like, so you're doing a bit, you were in policing, and then you went and started a jewelry business, and now you're doing a podcast. Like, I don't understand. And he just sort of said to me, explain it to me. And I looked at him, I was like, no, I'm done explaining it. No, sorry, I'm out. And that was the moment that I think I stopped caring about the naysayers and about the people going, explain what you're doing to me. Because I realized two things. One, I was done explaining. But two, the longer I spent talking about my stuff and explaining my life choices, the less time I was working on my business. So my advice, if you have naysayers around you and this thing, is one of you is correct. You're telling me I can't do it, and I'm telling you I want to do it. One of us is going to be right. It is my job to make sure I am correct. So the longer I spent fighting with you about why I'm going to do it, the less time I'm actually spending doing the thing I said I'm going to do. This is where the magic is. So it's almost about the naysayers exist. They are always going to exist. They become less vocal the more work that you do. But it is about 100% implementation every single time.
Yep. I agree. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, if you were to focus on one habit, mindset, or behavior that you've used in your life to create and focus on building a meaningful legacy, what would that be, and how could we adopt it into our life?
Legacy for me is just about everything. Legacy is, I think, if every person can have an understanding that you are going to die, the time that you have is finite, and the problem is that you think you have time, a very famous Buddha quote, is that will change the way that you live your life wholeheartedly. There is no guarantee for tomorrow. You look at, there is an amazing, if you want to really get some perspective on this, there is an amazing video by a guy named Z Frank, and it's called The Jelly Bean and Jelly Beans. And they lay out the average person's lifespan in jelly beans. And then they take out all the days that you sleep, all the days that you shower, all the days that you commute, all the days, and you're left over with what you see your days left in jelly beans. We have a finite amount of time. That is the thing that's going to change the game. If you can realize you're going to die and that your legacy, eventually your legacy is everything you have left, it is very easy to be committed to your goals.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that that's your habit. Nobody's ever said that on the show before. It's something I wholeheartedly agree on. and I think it will play into the final question here. But I love that is the habit and mindset that you need to get into to make every day.
My habit is get up at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
it sucks, and I'm really sorry. But if you want to, it's success is a numbers game. Let me be very clear on this. It's fully intentional. I work an extra 2 hours longer than most other people every day. That's how I've gotten ahead.
I love it. So how if we wanted to reach you, get access to your books? Your podcast is done. I don't know if it's still up. And
it is evergreen. We still have requests for interviews, which is kind of cute. Okay, best place to find me is jemimahashleigh.com. There are a ton of freebies. There are downloadables and how to build your legacy and how to build your brand. So for me, I'm a big focus on building your brand and making sure that you have that legacy and that people know who you are, your why of stuff. So there's at least a dozen freebies, free video stuff. You can get a copy of my book there too. That's on Amazon and Kindle as well.
That's perfect. So say it again, your web address, and then these links, they'll be in the show notes here, and also how to spell her name, because I always mispronounced it until she told me. So it's just
Aunt Jemimah with a H on the end of it. So yeah, www.jemimahashleigh.com.
Perfect. And those will be in the show notes there. So if you're wanting to go and get some of those freebies and think, how can I either barter for more time? How can I, because even if you're not starting a business, honestly, if you just want more time with your family, that's not stressful, want more time with your kids, it's worth it. So it's not just for business owners. It's for life people trying to win life.
Yeah.
It's for you too. Okay.
Absolutely.
So this is coming into one of my favorite parts of the show. It's like a game show. It's called Legacy on Rapid Fire.
Go. Okay? I love it. 5
questions. I'm looking for 1 word to 1 sentence answers, leaning to the 1 sentence. Okay. So first question is, what do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy today?
I've been traveling for the last 6 months and living out of a suitcase. I have lost a large amount of my routine, which is really a problem at the moment for me. I'm very routine orientated. So I'm trying to figure that out. I don't have Wi-Fi all the time. I have phone reception all the time. That's really holding me back.
Okay. Awesome. What do you think the hardest thing you've ever accomplished has been?
Probably international best-selling author. That was quite huge. Or quitting my 6-figure salary.
Okay. And what do you think the greatest success at this point in your life has been?
Too many to name. I'm so incredibly proud of what I've achieved. Leaving my job was my greatest success, doing that and betting on myself, 100% betting on myself and going, I'm going to make this work.
That's perfect. So what is another secret that you believe contributes most to your success?
Really be nice to people and don't be a terrible human. Be kind always to every single person that you meet. I'm serious. People underestimate just being a good human.
Yeah, I agree. And I believe I'm a good human. I'm super direct and sometimes not a lot of tact, but it's from a sincere place of love. And
100%. And people come to me for tough love all the time. I'm like, I love you, but that is the worst decision you're ever going to make if you do this thing.
Yeah. Being a good human means good intentioned human, not necessarily that everybody likes you. So just to be
exactly
there. And what are 2 or 3 books you'd recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
Oh, I don't know. Position Me by Jemimah Ashleigh is a pretty great book. Gary Vaynerchuk, Crushing It, was really, really great. If you want a good comedy read, Bossy Pants, Tina Fey, particularly for women out there. I'd also say Yes Please by Amy Poehler, and those 5-Second Rule, Mel Robbins.
Awesome. Okay, here's my favorite question. It's getting close to the end here. This is the question that I believe has to be at the bedrock foundation of everything people do in life. I have my questions. I have my clients answer it. I have my business partners answer it. I have everybody that I work with in my sphere of influence. I want to know the answer to this question. And more importantly, I want them to know the answer to this question, because I know the answer to my question, but it matters what the answer to their question is. So we're going to pretend that you've died, you're dead, gone.
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
This is 200 years from now, 6 generations. So this is your great, 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 great grandchildren. They're sitting around a table, and you get the opportunity to listen in to what they're saying about you, your legacy, what your life meant. What do you want them to be saying about you 6 generations from now?
she absolutely changed the game for women, female entrepreneurs. She, you know, and this for me is such a drive. So interesting that you say this, because such an interesting driver. Because I was talking to someone, to a male, of course it was a male, who is a bit of a naysayer of the females. And he's like, well, you know, it's not like you're going to change anything significant in your lifetime. And I was like, the changes that I make and the things that I'm able to change will change it for women in the future. Much like the women who came before me have changed it for me. My grandmother was not allowed to vote. She wasn't allowed to vote. So when people say to me, I don't vote, I'm like, what is wrong with you? Women gave their life, like literally was shot and killed for this right around the world. There are countries now that we don't have the right to do that. This isn't, as much as this is about me and what I'm trying to achieve, this is equally not about me in any way, shape or form. I just want them kind of, if I could listen to anything, I'm like, she was a total badass. Mm-hmm. That's what I want them to say.
Awesome. See, and what I love about that is that's an answer that's in alignment with this whole episode. That's in alignment with Jemimah's purpose. It's in alignment with everything. All that she's doing on a daily basis, what she's chasing, everything is in alignment. And that's where I want people to be in every area of their life. What is in alignment with how you want to be remembered in legitimately 200 years from now? That's why I've named this podcast Fuel Your Legacy, because it's not about the fuel. The fuel is the financial confidence and the know-how to build a legacy. The legacy is, what are you building?
The greatest thing, if you ever want to see what legacy can look like, properly see what legacy can look like, is go and watch Hamilton by Lin-Manuel Miranda. The podcast, like, go listen to the soundtrack, it is 100% around everything that happens in the United States at the moment is really about him, but the whole thing is around your legacy. Mm-hmm. I'm obsessed with the idea of legacy because it's ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all we have.
Yep. Completely agree, which is why that's the name of my brand, Fuel Your Legacy. I want to help people.
I love it.
Build their legacy and in the process, gain more financial understanding, save families, marriages, everything connected.
It's a real thing, and I think it's amazing what you're doing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jemimah, for coming on and sharing your expertise with us. Honestly, if you're not getting in touch with her or getting onto her website and taking advantage of the freebies, I don't know what you're doing. But this isn't just if you have a business. I can't reiterate that enough. These are life skills that are not taught by traditional educational processes. And unfortunately, I'm going to burst your bubble, but what you were taught by your parents or your grandparents most likely is not success habits. Just put it out there. Because my kids, they're going to learn things from me that are not success habits because I'm not a perfect human, right? And so understanding that not everything you do is perfect and not everything you learned is perfect is key. So definitely go check her out. Make sure you're engaging with her on social media and on her website and getting as much information from her as possible, and maybe even hiring her to help you get your life in order. Might make you happier, which is kind of one of the goals of life. Is
literally the goal of life is to
fulfillment and happiness.
Literally the goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And we will catch you guys next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me. And if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.